Sorry about that, babe.
Rampage is originally a 1986 arcade game by Bally Midway, but for the purpose of this review we'll be focusing solely on the NES port that was released in 1988, published by Data East, which we recently played for October 2022 in my Discord's Test Your Bits challenge. I'm not going to focus much comparing the different versions, rather I'm going to be looking solely at the NES game as its own entity, aside from a few quick notes. In Rampage, you assume the role of either George, the King Kong-like beast, or Lizzie, the reptile, pseudo-Godzilla creature. Unfortunately, Ralph, the wolf-like monstrosity, did not make it over to the NES port. Sad. The goal of Rampage is quite simple. You must destroy each of the 128 cities and stay alive. Luckily for you, if you die, you can just keep playing as long as you press the B button, but for our challenge on the Discord, we had one death and it was donezo, and whatever your score was, that was it. You rack up points by destroying buildings as well as various vehicles and obstacles in your way, such as soldiers, trucks, tanks, helicopters, and so forth. There also exist both good and bad food items for your creatures. Things like turkey, coffee, melons, and fruits will give your beast health replenishment, also eating various humans, of course. But on the flip side, items such as cactus, toasters, skulls, and so on will cause you a detriment. I'd also be remiss if I did not mention that Rampage is very much a multiplayer game. In the arcades, you could have a 3-monster co-op. Unfortunately, again on the NES, it's only 2, but it can provide for a pretty fun, casual gaming experience with your friends. Now, breaking down Rampage on a technical level. Graphically, Rampage isn't a lot to behold. I feel like the overall color palette is pretty bland. Lots of blues, grays, and greens, and not much else other than the specific items that you find inside of the buildings. The monster sprites are okay, but nothing to write home about. I honestly don't really know what else there is to say about this. There's really not that much to discuss. Overall, Rampage graphically is average at best. The sound. Another lackluster technical breakdown. To put it bluntly, there's not that much soundtrack to be had, and the tracks that are there are typically pretty low energy and drony. Really, the only track that had a lot of life, for me at least, was the Search bonus round track. But even that's not anything to go crazy over. The sound effects are also not the best. They seem pretty muffled, sometimes it seemed a little off timing-wise, and much like the music overall, it's just nothing too great. Controls. The controls of Rampage are fairly easy to get the hang of. The start button pauses the game. The A button punches buildings, enemies, and grabs humans. And the B button jumps. The D-pad serves as a way to move the creatures and ascend and descend the buildings with up and down. You'll want to get into the habit of jumping off of a crumbling building so you don't get stunned and then shot into oblivion. While on the buildings, depending on which way you hold the D-pad, you could punch left, right, up, or even diagonal in a way. Jumping, in general, is very floaty, and probably really the only thing that you have to get used to in terms of figuring out where you're landing, whether it be jumping from building top to building top, jumping to punch a helicopter out of the sky, or simply avoiding obstacles. There was a slight learning curve there for me, but overall I can't really complain. Things seem responsive and rather straightforward. The gameplay and the fun factor. Do you like doing the same things over and over? If so, great, because you'll be doing that a lot in Rampage. As mentioned earlier, the goal is destroying the city and staying alive. Punching, eating, getting shot, and so forth is the name of the game. I will say though, the more that I played, the more that I did enjoy it. It can be very satisfying getting out of a hairy situation and destroying the city. Playing this game alone with no restrictions, it's probably not the best game to be played. But throw it into a competition setting like we did on my Discord, it definitely helps raise the stakes and entertainment value. But probably the most fun to be had would be the aforementioned 2-player mode, destroying the USA with your buddies. I also don't like the fact that you have unlimited continues. I mean, yeah, you could put your own restrictions on it, but wouldn't it be better if, like, I don't know, you just had 3 lives and that was it? Developer intended difficulty limitations always flow better with me than this type of stuff. Rampage on the NES seems to be a rather meh arcade port. From what I understand, the Sega Master System version is much better on almost every level. And don't get me wrong, I do own it, but I have yet to play it for myself. I did get some mild enjoyment out of Rampage, but there really just isn't much substance. There's no variety between the characters other than just a sprite. Many of the cities seem fairly similar. After playing for a half hour, you kinda get the picture. And being able to just constantly continue, it kinda cheapens the game for me. Like, what's the point? All things considered, I give Rampage on the NES a 4 out of 10. If you take off the nostalgia glasses and look at this game/port for what it is, there's not much to be had or said. It's technically limited, repetitive, there's no real difficulty, and for me the only positives going for it are the initial waves of satisfaction in blowing things up and playing with a friend. Certainly it's a playable game, but this is not recommended over other games better suited for your time. If you've enjoyed this review, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing if you haven't already. If you'd like, you could check out my Test Your Bits challenge run in the pinned comment and description below for Rampage, and I'll see you guys on the next review. Take care.